Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit and happy Valentine's Day, whatever that means to you, because to me it means nothing as of right now. It's another lonely year. But, moving on, it got me thinking, with it being Valentine's Day, about the relationships within Critical Role. And as of right now in Campaign 3, there are zero confirmed true romantic relationships between any of the characters, which is kind of rare. I believe at this point in campaign 2, Ford and Jester have made it very clear that they had feelings for each other, they just didn't know what they were going to do with them. And same goes for Caleb having a crush on Jester, Bo had a crush on Jester, everyone had a crush on Jester in campaign 2. It's kind of funny. Also, Not was in a relationship, was married, and had a kid. And then in campaign 1, there were flirtations between Percy and Vex, and then Vax and Keyleth at this point, and Scanlan had been, flirting with Pike basically the whole time. So it's kind of rare that we have seen very little of it. We've seen joking flirtatiousness between certain characters, but I wanted to go over today and look at some of the community relationships. And when I looked at them, or the community ships, when I looked at them, to my absolute horror, I learned that everyone is shipped with everyone. So I figured very quickly that looking over this would be pretty worthless. So for me, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go over each character and sort of think who I think would be worthwhile for them to end up with. So technically this is a list, but I don't think it is. Let's start with FCG. So the reason I'm starting with FCG is because FCG should be shipped with no one and should end up with no one because they're a robot, and to me that's a little strange. I don't know how else to really put it other than that. I also look at their characters when I think about this kind of stuff, which is not very often, mind you. And, well, I just look at it as FCG had one love before all of this, and that was Dancer, and that ended terribly for them, with them not even being close. They don't speak anymore, nothing happens with them anymore, and that was more of a parental love. Whereas now, FCG is with the group, and for sure they absolutely probably love everyone there, but it's more like siblings or best friends sort of a vibe that I get off of all this. So for me, for that character FCG to go from anything from where they are now, which is friends with everybody and respects everybody and wants to take care of everybody, to being in some sort of romantic relationship, seems a little off and weird and strange, and don't think any of that should happen. So FCG should just remain as one of the characters in this campaign, like many before, who end up with nobody player-wise. If a automaton shows up, or a oraton shows up, and they hit it off, that would be excellent. But other than that, I realistically don't see any relationships. I've seen people say weird ass ships between FCG and a different character, and that's why I said, to my absolute horror, everyone is shipped with everyone. So, yeah. Absolute horror. I don't believe anyone should ship a robot with organic beings. I don't know, it's just weird for me, personally. So FCG, I don't see FCG ending up with anybody. Simple as that. Next is Chutney, and much like FCG, I don't believe this character will end up with anybody. He flirts around with a handful of characters. He's flirted with literally Laudna, Imogen, and Fern the most for sure. But to me, it always seems like a joke, and everyone understands it's a joke. Even the characters in game and the players outside believe it's all to be a joke. And I believe this is because initially Travis started off with Grog, who didn't romance a single character outside of an NPC encounter with a fey creature. And then Ford obviously had a 140 episode span arc of, becoming open about his feelings for Jester, to now being Chutney, an old man who could die at any moment in time, just drop dead with old age, and jokes around often about it. He is now, Travis himself has now come out of his shell and is willing to joke around about it. Go back to campaign 1 as Grog. Every single time something like this would come up with a romance or anything like that, he'd shut off. It happened in campaign 2 as well. He would just sort of not pay attention to it, but eventually would come out of his shell and be open to the idea. And now he's literally making jokes about it. To me, Chutney is the full-on, I am over this sort of relationship issue I had before. I'm okay with it now happening in a game. I've done it once. I don't need to ever do it again. but now it's time to make some jokes about it. That is what Chutney feels like to me. Again, to me. I also believe that if there is a character, for whatever reason, that Chutney ends up with, probably Fern, but there's a bit of an age discrepancy, like I said before, and Fern to me doesn't seem like someone who'd want to be tied down in the first place. I'm going to get to Fern in a minute. So, if I had to be totally honest about it, don't think Chutney's going to end up with anybody just like FCG, but that's just me. So next is Fern. I think this character actually has a few possible relationships. She has a mild relationship with Chutney, so there's that. Whatever. They might have one night stand eventually, and Chutney might bite her. Simple as that. Beyond that, I believe that this character is more than likely going to end up back in the Fey realm at the end of this campaign if she survives, and she's just going to live with Maury and raise Mister and a bunch of other animals in the house there in the Harrowcall Fells. So, or Harrowfell Call, whatever. I do not think this character is going to end up with somebody, but there is a possibility of one that I've noticed, and that is Ashton. Ashton and Fern get along super well. They pick on each other constantly. They always steal from each other. They always take guard posts together. I've noticed that a lot happens, when they're traveling and they have to take camp. Those two end up going together a lot, and they end up talking, and they end up connecting quite a bit. So that, to me, is a possibility, and it's probably the only true sort of relationship that I could probably give to Fern. Everything else is either jokes, or she goes off by herself and lives with Mister and Maury. So that's it for Fern. Ashton is probably the biggest, number one. Some people would like to say Orem, but I think Orem is like just straight up gay, so probably not. Anyway, moving on. Ashton is up next, and there's actually a few here as well. First and foremost, Fern, like I mentioned in the last one. Also, I do believe there is a slight relationship, maybe, with Laudna. When Laudna died, Ashton was hell-bent on bringing her back, and potentially that made it sort of like a relationship happening there, but it could also be something that they would have done for virtually every character there, with the exception of Chutney. I feel like they would have just been like, Travis's next character. But, joking of course, I do think that there's a potential there of some sort of relationship forming, as they truly cared about bringing her back. They took care of her body. They made sure that she was not just being tossed around in the hole. So, yeah, definitely some sort of relationship there. I don't know how strong it is. It's just an observation I made. But the last one is, to me, the most, probably, the most, potential one that I see for Ashton, and that is Orem. There is a level of respect between these two characters that is only matched by Chutney and Orem's relationship, or their respect for each other. And what I'm talking about is, when everyone was discussing how they all have issues, everyone pointed out that Orem is the only one that doesn't have any true trauma or issues or whatever. Ashton went out of their way to go to Orem and specify, we know you have issues as well. We care about you. We just think you're the best one to handle it, and that he respects his ability to be able to do so. Ashton has gone out of their way multiple times to sort of do this for Orem. Made sure that they're okay, make sure that they're always making, their voice is always being heard. Constantly this happens between Ashton and Orem, and there's always conversations between them that end with respect or something there as well. And I do think that this is a possibility, potentially one of the few that'll actually happen, maybe. Before, up to this point, this probably won't happen. This one I can see very well happening, and I think it would be cool if it did. Simple as that. And next is Orem, and I already mentioned one of the two that I believe is possible for Orem, and that is Ashton. And I don't think I need to go over it again. They have a great deal of respect for each other. Something I neglected to say earlier was they actually think alike when it comes to a lot of combat-oriented scenarios as well. They're both always making sure to be the last one on the battlefield when it comes to things, and they always try to pull other people out. Once they're safe, they figure out how they can help others get safe. This actually just happened in episode 47, I believe, where they were pulling both Laudna and Fern's bodies out of the fray against Gloomglut as they were trying to flee the Shiver Keep. They have a very similar mindset when it comes to these sort of things. And that is another thing I think could stack on top of what I said already for why they probably could end up together. So next one is actually Dorian. Now, lots of people speculate about Dorian and where Dorian lies with the whole shipping thing. Lots of people say Laudna. Lots of people say Imogen. Lots of people say Fern. I think not. I think Dorian would probably end up with Orem, much for the same reasons of respect and their friendship before. And I think in Dorian's mind, that's blossomed into something more. And yeah, as simple as that. I think Dorian probably respects and cares for Orem the most out of anybody in the Crown Keepers group, potentially. And yeah, that's it. Simple as that. I think Dorian, Orem, or Orem, Ashton. There you go. Also, before I move on, I think Ashton, Dorian would also work well. Forgot to mention that before. Anyway, moving on. Do I even need to explain this one? It's Laudna and Imogen. These two characters have been effectively playing the will they won't they game from episode 1. They've had a bit of turbulence when they broke a stone, but they both racked their heads around trying to fix that situation. They always care about each other's opinions, thoughts, plans, physical health, mental health. They're always looking after each other constantly. They're always worried about each other. Whenever Laudna goes off and spider climbs, you can look at Laura, and Imogen is absolutely terrified of her going off by herself, to the point where she always tries to make someone go invisible to help her. So, personally, this is the most likely to happen out of all of these that I've mentioned before. This is number 1, probably going to happen. This is like, to me, the Ford and Jester relationship where, from the beginning, almost exactly the same, it was made very clear that there is something going on between these two characters, and it's the whether or not they have the capability or to do something about it, whether they have the courage to come out and say something about it. The two of them have been dancing around the whole situation basically from the beginning, which to me makes it sound like they designed the two characters together like this, to have some sort of relationship like this, for them to eventually come together. I don't know when, but I feel like most people know this is likely going to happen. And if it doesn't, I feel like there's going to be a riot. And I will join said riot, because this is what they've been hinting at basically from the beginning. They always care about each other. When Laudna died, Imogen was not the same character. She was a totally different person. She was pissed all the time. She would cut people off. She would basically, damn right, like, talk over top of people, which was something so out of the blue for the character. It affected her so much that this character, who she loves, is dead, and that is all she wanted to do. They forgot about the solstice or Laudna forgot about the solstice. Imogen forgot about the solstice when Laudna died. It is that much of a thing for her. So for me, looking at it from the outside in, they have to, right? That just seems to be the only option. I did say Laudna Ashton earlier, but that was like a blip on the radar compared to a handful of other things. And it's more than likely not going to happen. So, yeah. I don't think I needed to explain this one at all to anybody who's been watching Campaign 3. That did not need to be explained. But I did anyway. Laudna and Imogen. Probably the only one that's happening on this entire thing. So there you have it. The relationships that I think are possible in this campaign, or likely to happen or to not. Where or who I believe they will end up with. So yeah, there's that. Valentine's Day video. Excellent. I get to look at relationships between fictional characters and remember that I am lonely. I'm kidding. Anyway, this has been a fun one. It's a little different than what I normally do. Normally I talk about serious in-game things. This is much more of a lighthearted conversation, which is nice. And it's a nice little bit of brevity before they go into whatever they're going to do this Thursday. So I'm excited for that. So, if you're just like me and you are alone on this magical day of corporateness of making people feel alone, just know there are others like you out there. And you can all be my Valentine. We'll go with that. So, just like next year, whoever is still just like me and has no one in their life to be their Valentine, next year and this year and the year after that and any years after that, we can all be each other's Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. We can all be each other's Valentine's. I tried, guys. I really did.